All right, a big welcome to Mr. Cheese class. Today we are diving deep into one of the most important parts of your life sciences curriculum, population ecology. We're going to look at the rules that control how living things grow, shrink, and get along, or don't get along.
So, let's kick things off with a totally wild thought experiment. Imagine a single bacterium. If it just kept dividing every 20 minutes with nothing to stop it, its descendants would literally outweigh the entire planet in just 2 days. Which, of course, raises the question, why aren't we all swimming in a sea of bacteria right now? Figuring out the answer to that is what population ecology is all about.
To get to that answer, we've got to start with the basics. We need to learn the language. Let's break down the fundamental building blocks of any ecosystem, kind of like starting with a single Lego and building up.
First up, we have the species. Now, the key word here isn't just interbreed. It's that they have to produce fertile offspring. You know, babies that can then go on to have their own babies. Think about it. A horse and a donkey can make a mule, right? But mules are sterile. That's nature's little trick that keeps horses and donkeys as two separate species.
Okay, so if a species is the general type of animal, a population is way more specific. It's a group of the same species all living in the same area at the same time. So we're not talking about every zebra in all of Africa. We're talking about that one specific herd of zebras you might see in the Kruger Park. That's a population.
Now, let's zoom out one more level to the community. A community is basically all the different populations that share the same space. So back in Kruger Park, it's not just the zebra population. It's also the lions that hunt them, the acacia trees they stand under, the grasses they eat, even the tiny little microbes in the dirt. It's the whole shebang, the whole web of life, all interacting.
And that whole community is constantly being influenced by two different kinds of things. You've got your biotic factors, that's all the living stuff, predators, prey, plants, you name it. And then you have the abiotic factors, the non-living things like the amount of sunlight, the temperature, the water available. To survive, a population has to deal with both.
Okay, so we've got our population defined, but what actually makes its numbers go up or down? Well, let's pop the hood and look at the engine that drives all of this change. It really comes down to 4 key forces.
It's really just a simple numbers game, like balancing a budget. On the one side, you have things that add to the population. That's natality, a fancy word for the birth rate, and emigration, which is when new individuals move in from somewhere else. And on the other side, you have the subtractions, mortality, the death rate, and emigration, when individuals pack up and leave. And it boils down to this super simple formula. You take all the additions, the births and the immigrants, and you subtract all the subtractions, the deaths and the emigrants. If the first number is bigger, congrats, your population is growing. If the second number is bigger, it's shrinking. And if they're perfectly equal, the population is stable. But let me tell you, that perfect balance is pretty rare in the wild.
Think about it. An engine with the gas pedal floored, but no brakes? That's just asking for a crash. And this takes us right back to that bacteria question from the beginning. Why don't they take over the world? Because nature has brakes. And these brakes, or limiting factors, are what stop that kind of crazy, out-of-control growth.
And there's a scientific term for all these brakes put together: environmental resistance. It's pretty much everything in the environment that pushes back against a population's growth. We're talking lack of food, not enough water, predators, competition for space, all of it.
All this environmental resistance creates a natural limit, a sort of ceiling on how big a population can get. And this is a super important concept for you guys to know. We call it the carrying capacity, and you often see it written as just a capital K. It's the maximum number of individuals that an ecosystem can handle long-term without everything collapsing.
So what happens when a population just blows right past that carrying capacity? Well, it's a predictable and often tragic story. First, you get this super fast growth. Then comes the overshoot, where the population gets way too big for its environment. That leads to scarcity. Food, water, and space start running out. And finally, you get the crash. The death rate skyrockets and the population just plummets.
Now, these breaks, these limiting factors, come in 2 main types. First, you have density-dependent factors. These are the ones that get worse the more crowded it gets. Think about how easily diseases can spread in a packed area, or how fierce competition becomes. Then, you have density-independent factors. These are totally random. A massive veld fire or a sudden flood doesn't care how many individuals are in the population. It impacts everyone.
Of course, no population lives in a little bubble. They're all part of this huge, complicated social network interacting with all the other species around them. There are friends, there are enemies, there are rivals. Let's break down the main ways they interact.
We can boil all those messy interactions down into three main categories. You've got predation, the classic hunter versus hunted story. Then there's competition, where different species are fighting over the exact same limited resources. And then you have symbiosis, which is a catch-all for any relationship where species live together in a really close partnership.
Let's dig into symbiosis a bit more, because it's fascinating. The word itself just means living together, and it creates some of the most amazing partnerships in all of nature. And it really comes in three different flavors you need to know.
Here's a really easy way to remember them. Just think in terms of plus, minus, and zero. In mutualism, it's a plus-plus, a total win-win where both species get something good out of the deal. In commensalism, it's a plus-zero. One organism benefits, and the other one, well, it's not helped, but it's not hurt either. It's just unaffected. And then you have parasitism. That's a clear plus-minus, a win-lose, where one benefits by harming the other.
So, we've gone through all the big rules of population ecology. Now it's time to turn that mirror around and look at ourselves. Let's apply these exact same ideas, growth, limits, interactions, to the most dominant species on the planet, us. For almost all of human history, there weren't that many of us. But then, in what is just a blink of an eye in geologic time, our population just exploded past 8 billion people. So, how do we do it? Well, we got really, really good at pushing back against environmental resistance. Things like modern medicine and massive-scale agriculture basically allowed us to raise the Earth's carrying capacity, at least for humans.
To really understand a human population, like our own here in South Africa, scientists use this awesome visual tool called an age-gender pyramid. And just by looking at its shape, you can tell a whole story. A really wide base means lots of young people, which could mean a population boom is coming. A narrow base, on the other hand, might mean a shrinking population in the future. It's like a snapshot of our past and a forecast all in one.
And this brings us to the final and most important question. After everything we've talked about, carrying capacity, the reality of limited resources, the danger of overshooting those limits, what does it all mean for our future? Especially for us, right here in South Africa. And that's not just some question for an exam. It's the real-world challenge that population ecology forces every single one of us to think about.